a 3.5 billion rand lifeline. That's what SAA received from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. But specific details on the deal are still sketchy, and some commentators say it's a taxpayer bailout disguised as a bank loan. Well, DBSA Group Executive of Transacting, Zodwa Mbele, speaks to us now. Ms. Mbele, thank you very much for your time. Do you want to flesh out the details of this bank loan, in your words?
Okay. Thank you very much, Xoli, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come in and give you our perspective to this deal. You have mentioned that it's a bailout, it's a government bailout, and it's not just maybe to give you some perspective, it's not a loan per se, it's a bridge equity to government. If you recall that in December, the government decided to put SAA on business rescue, and as part of that business rescue, there was a package of about 4 billion, 2 billion of which was funded by commercial banks, and the other 2 billion was meant to come from government. But unfortunately, government did not have the legal instrument that allowed them to effect the 2 billion timelessly.
What is bridging finance? I'm sorry to interrupt.
So that's the point. I'm giving you the context how we came into the picture. So because the government could not effect the 2 billion timelessly, so DBSA had to bridge equity, that portion that government ought to have put in. And this funding is also on the back of government paying DBSA through the appropriation that would have been earmarked for SAA. So that's really what it is, really. It's not like the underpin of the transaction is on SAA's ability to repay. As you know, that it has to first produce a credible business recovery plan by the business rescue practitioner, and we don't know how long it's going to take for them to turn the entity around. And it's a bridge in the sense that it's short-term lending as well, so it's repayable at the end of, in 6 months' time.
And that's the point,
yeah.
Because SAA, some will argue, will not be able to pay back this money. Let me start with this. Your mandate as a development institution is to fund developmental projects.
Right.
Now, where is the business case in funding SAA?
And again, I'm going back to the underpin of the transaction. It's not the SAA that is underpinned here. It's the government appropriation. But anyway, going back to the development mandate, the perspective that we took as a bank is that we need to arrest the deterioration of SAA, because right now, as it is in the business rescue, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are not booking. So there's possibly liquidity problems, which may end up with liquidation situation. Again, if you think about the liquidation of SAA, it will trigger existing lenders to call the guarantees to the very same government, which will also trigger cross-default. So for us, we look at how do we arrest the downside risk, which might be systemic risk that we need. So we needed to rise above just SAA and look at the bigger picture of the systemic risk in the country that this might trigger if it's not handled properly.
If SAA is unable to repay this loan,
and it won't repay. That's not the look-through is not on SAA. We look through to government. We are essentially stepping in. If government had the ability to make good of the 2 billion timelessly, surely DBSA would not have been in the picture. So that's the point that I'm making, that the business case is not on SAA.
Here's the point. Government could not come up with the 2 billion.
No, not that. Read the business day of Monday last week, I think, and where the Minister of Finance had indicated he did not have the legal instrument to make good. He did not say, I don't have the cash flow to make good of that. And they can explain to you how it works because of the appropriation bill. They had a special appropriation that they made, I think for Eskom last year, if you remember, I can't remember the exact amount, of 23 billion. So they can't do another round of the similar until the government goes through the budget cycle, which the minister will pronounce sometime in end of February. At the same time, SAA needed money, not end of February. SAA needed money as of yesterday, so they couldn't wait for that part. And this is why we keep saying it is a bridge to that tranche that government ought to have come up with timelessly. And governments never said, I don't have money. I think if you refer to business day, it's very clear. It is the legal instrument because by law, he cannot have another round of that appropriation. So that's really the context in which this is done.
Let me ask you this. Just tell the viewers who the chairperson of DBSA is and what his position is in the ANC right now?
So the chairperson of the Development Bank board is Enoch Godongwana. He is an NEC member of the ANC. We've heard Jabu Muleketi last term for 9 years, who was also the ANC member, and NEC possibly. Before that, we had Jay Naidu, who was also an NEC member. Prior to Jay, of course, we had Professor Wiseman Gutlu, possibly was not an ANC member, maybe was PAC, if I recall.
Now,
that is the only, so there's nothing new. And I need to also bring context here. What we have done here, it's not different from what we have done with ESCOM, by the way. In 2018, we provided a bridge funding. It's not, the only difference there, we were a consortium of banks. The difference this time around together, it was a club loan. The difference this time around, DBSA, it's a bilateral. Bear in mind that not only DBSA has funded the post-commencement funding. When I refer to post-commencement funding, I'm referring to the funding in respect of the business rescue. We're not the only lender.
Reason, Ms. Mbele, I'm sorry to interrupt you because of time constraints. The reason I'm asking you to tell the viewers who the chairperson of DBSA is and what his position in the ANC is simply that was pressure put to bear on the executive of this bank to give this 3.5 billion rand to SAA?
Never. I can say that with, with clear conscience. And I can tell you, at the time when we were approached, that very same Monday, it was not only DBSA that was approached. There was other local development finance institutions. There were other foreign-owned banks because local banks had already done their tranche. So it was never DBSA. We were not singled out to say go to DBSA. And we followed thereafter. We took a view. Other local DFIs, they took a view that possibly they might be interested on the recovery plan. We took a view that we are in the short term, not on the, possibly we'll look into the recovery plan and see the execution. We might have interest, we may not have interest, but the view that we took, we are in. So DBSA was never approached just as because it's DBSA only. All the DFIs were approached and they took a view that including a pension fund. So it's very important that we put that context together. Ideally, if the timing was perfect, we would have done this with a foreign-owned bank together as possibly a club deal. But because we were misaligned in terms of our timing, this is where we ended up going alone, and possibly they'll come on board as well for the other portion of the loan. So it's very important that we put context. And by the way, the governance, our board is very independent.
All right.
Yeah.